Hey folks, and welcome back to the Stitch Up. And today we have a little departure actually. This is a requested episode. My good friend Lisa has said, hey, I really dig this film, or she gave me a list of films and said that this is one she really liked, and I thought, hey, there's a lot to talk about there. It's the 2005 comedy great, 40-Year-Old Virgin.
You a virgin?
Oh, you are hilarious. This is good.
You're a virgin!
How can you go 40 years and not have sex?
I just kind of stopped trying.
We gotta help the man. We cannot let you go on being a virgin.
So this film came out in 2005. It was kind of nearing the end of that, I suppose probably not like gross out comedy, but that Judd Apatow school of comedy that was happening at that particular time period. And this is about a guy played by Steve Carell, gone through his life. He's a good looking dude. He's a bit of a nerd, but he's awkward. He's socially awkward. He's awkward with women. It has affected his sex life, and he's now 40 years old, and he's never done it. And let the hilarity ensue. I think looking back on this film and rewatching it, there's some problematic stuff there, particularly when it comes to race, sexual orientation, and so on. Let's look at it through the prism of where it is in time. I think it's a really great comedy, but it's also more a great love story than anything else. It's about this guy who, takes all this advice from these idiots who have no idea what they're talking about as far as, being in relationships is concerned. And by following them, he is completely led astray, where his heart is constantly telling him to go after this one particular woman. And he does it at his peril because he's constantly listening to, these group of other guys who have no fucking idea what they're talking about. So as I said, Judd Apatow directed this film. He was directing a lot of the movies of this ilk at the time. Steve Carell is the co-screenwriter, and it's tailor-made for him. And the funny thing is, he's both the straight man and the gag guy as well. Like, he's got a lot of straight lines for, the wonderful supporting cast to kind of be the comedy foils for this story. But he, like, the through line of him, and then he slowly gets funnier as time goes on. Starts out quite meek, and then it ends up being, the one you're laughing at the most.
Baby, I didn't know you became already.
Hey, motherfucker!
Carell also had a backup script, just a bit of trivia here, prepared if the studio said no to the script that they'd written, that was completely devoid of profanity, which I think's hilarious because he's ahead of his time. The film Knocked Up, which is also a Judd Apatow film, if I'm correct, was supposed to be a sequel to this. I don't know in what capacity. Maybe Steve Carell's character and the Catherine Kinnear character had a kid or something. But that ended up being whatever it was. But it would have been interesting to see what a sequel to this might have been, because it couldn't be 40-Year-Old Virgin anymore. 40-year-old something else. Well, he wouldn't be 40. 42-year-old happily married man is the sequel to this. This is my favourite bit of trivia. The We Sell Your Stuff on eBay store that Catherine Kinnear's character runs is an actual store that is in that shopping complex and was like written into the script after they location scouted, which is brilliant. And the title role was originally written for Jason Segel, but he didn't do it. Sorry, Natty. My friend Natty's a big fan of Jason Segel. It's hard to talk about a comedy while trying to be funny as well, so forgive me if this isn't laugh out loud. Not that any of the fucking other episodes have been, but just, you know what I'm saying. It's funny, this fits the Save the Cat screenwriting structure. Look it up afterwards. It's too much information to put on a screen or to explain, but there's a certain screenwriting technique called Save the Cat, and it's where certain things have to happen within the beat structure, based on page even, in a screenplay for it to, the hero's journey to be satisfying. And the Save the Cat theorem works perfectly well for this film, which it normally wouldn't for a comedy. They just don't make big box comedy like this anymore. I can't think of the last one, like an Anchorman or a Dodgeball or something like that. Like by big box comedy, I mean something they put money into, something with a prestige cast, really good cast, really good comedians, production that is above and beyond, let's say, $10 million. It starts in Andy's apartment. He wakes up and he's working out, and he's got all his gym gear and everything, and that's his daily routine. It's not a bad thing to do. I mean, being a 40-year-old virgin makes you fitter. That's, not the worst thing that's ever happened. It's funny that the credits are Times New Roman or something. It's real lazy. He works at Smart Tech, where you've got a myriad of racial stereotypes and stereotypes in general as well. The Mooj character, who I think is supposed to be Indian or Pakistani.
Butthole pleasures.
It's not about butthole pleasures at all.
It's not about this rusty trombone and the dirty Sanchez.
Very early in their careers, Seth Rogen, Paul Rudd, and Romani Malco. And they kind of fill out the friends group that Andy's character or Steve Carell's character will soon be a part of. The character of Andy is played as both like funny but also sweet and sympathetic, which is hard to do in comedy because you often have to be one or the other. There's not a lot of leeway as far as like a truly dramatic performance within a comedy that is like this type of comedy where it's a bit absurd and having genuine funny moments that can be absurd while still having the drama be real. What we would call the inciting incident is where Andy gets invited to a card game with these guys. It's late night in the shop and they're talking about their sexual experiences and it's all fine. And then Andy gets asked about his and he starts making them up and reveals himself to be a virgin just by, the sheer fact that he has no idea what a boob feels like. And these fucking baboons decide that the best idea is to try and get him laid. Which, if you're an actual friend to someone, that's probably not the support that they need at that particular point in time. The funny thing is that Andy is the one who stays, like thematically stays almost the same. Like, I mean, he grows obviously because he gets into a relationship and, becomes a father figure as well, which is a beautiful turn for the character. It's the guys around him who change the most. And that only happens because he's there. Like, he's the one who changes them while they're trying to get him to be more like them and they're complete fuck-ups. Like, they have no idea what they're doing in terms of relationships with other people, including Andy. And they end up going through these beautiful transformations, getting a full arc the same way that he does, So you've got Rudd, who's, stuck on his old girlfriend. Seth Rogen is a pothead.
He thinks you're a pothead.
I am.
Romani Malco is constantly cheating on his girlfriend. He's obsessed with sex in a lot of ways. He seems like a bit of a sex addict. There's a scene later on where he talks about getting caught cheating because he left one of the condoms on. Like, just fucking cruel shit. And these are not role models. These are not your typical mentors in drama or comedy for that matter, like for Andy. And it's only because they are so fucked up and put Andy through all this shit that he discovers what he actually wants. The Mooj scene is really funny, talking about love. That's probably a highlight. The B-roll of that is great too, like the deleted scenes of that. If you happen to be online one night and bored, go and check out just the cut scenes from that because they're hilarious.
Instead of the rattlesnake wiggle and the alligator fuck house, it's... Don't laugh, you're fucking up my lines here.
Sorry.
Fuck you.
Tell me about the alligator.
Fuck you.
And then you get Jane motherfucking Lynch. Oh, man. What a treasure. What an absolute treasure this woman is. And she's such... Like, she elevates this film so much. She's the VIP, like, easily. There's a great scene where she's flirting with Andy, telling him a story about the first time, like, when she lost her virginity to their Guatemalan gardener who sang her a song about football and she thought it was a love song.
Donde va con tanta prisa al partido de fútbol?
She's just so good. She's the most amazing timing. And there's great in the director's cut, which I watched, which maybe you haven't seen. There's a scene where she's talking to Seth Rogen about wanting to get baked. She's like, can you get me some pot? And he's like, I can get you some pot. Well, how much do you want? She goes, I just want to get baked for like a week. Rewatch Gandhi. It's a wonderful performance. Paul Rudd's character, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of screenplay structure, convinces Andy to go out with the guys, something he wouldn't normally do. And at first he refuses. He says, I don't want to do that. You're just going to make fun of me. He refuses the call to adventure, which is textbook screenwriting stuff, and then does. And that's kind of how we get into the bulk of what is the second act. It's interesting because I wonder what this script would be if it was made now. I don't think you would get away with it at all. The same way that you wouldn't get away with something like Tropic Thunder. Not only because of the racial stuff, but just because it doesn't hit right. Like, it's not of its time anymore. I think the sexual humiliation stuff wouldn't play the way that it does in this. It's all this stuff's played for laughs, but it's quite traumatic. There's also a sweetness too, because by the time you get to the middle of the second act, he's found these friends, and that they are his friends. And they have him. And it is... where it was just like, we need an extra buddy to, play poker with or whatever, to, we need to help this virgin. And now he becomes their sage. He becomes the person that they go to get the advice from, because somehow he's got it all worked out, even though, he doesn't. Oh, just a little aside I want to say as well, I fucking want his toy collection. Are you kidding me? Be amazing. I don't know where I'd put any of it. It's quite busy in here as it is, but still. Not even for the money, just because it would be baller to have the collection. It'd be so awesome. He's got a creature in Black Lagoon fucking doll. I'd love to have that. They're at the club and, out with Jay, and Jay's like giving him advice of, what he should be doing, like running down drunk bitches. Uncomfortable sentiment in a more modern context. But regardless of that, enter the wonderful Leslie Mann, who's the director's wife, in fact, is Judd Apatow's wife. I don't know, might still be, I don't know. People get divorced in Hollywood a lot, so you never know. But she comes in and she's this drunk sort of ex-sorority kind of woman who's had a little bit too much to drink at her friend's party because she's upset that she's marrying her ex and all that stuff. And they drive home and she's absolutely smashed off her face and can't see where she's driving and says that they should get some
fucking French toast,
which is hilarious. It all ends kind of poorly and they crash into a car and she throws up all over him. And there's a great moment of pause where she's like, I'll still have sex with you if you want. And Andy goes, you know what? I'll pause on the sex. He's covered in pink vomit.
Did you have a daiquiri tonight?
Yeah.
I thought you might.
Trying to hold back vomit himself. That's probably my favourite delivery in the whole film. Back at the store the following day, they're all kind of giving him shit. And as they're walking back through the stock room, Catherine Kinnear comes in and she's like, what a remarkable actress. She's so great in this role because she's sweet and sympathetic, but strong and also very, very funny in a way that the side character, or a side character doesn't need to be. Like where she's on the phone thinking that Andy's like a cold caller. Remarkable. And she's also an older woman, like she's closer to Andy's age. She'd be in her late 30s by this point, I'd probably say. And she's also a grandmother. She's got teenage daughters and an older daughter. Like she's got a young daughter, teenage daughter, and one who's in her 20s who also has a daughter. So she's an older woman who's a grandma. There's a joke about it in there, which is amazing. And I don't think you'd get that anymore because it's illegal now to hire any woman over 35 to be in a film. Except Michelle Pfeiffer. So Andy gets her number and they give him, the guys give him bad advice again. He's like, don't call her. If you like her, don't call her. He's like, when's the next Olympics? It's ridiculous. And Paul Rudd's got the great line, love is a mysterious fig. I want that as an epitaph on my gravestone, please. Love was a mysterious fig to Regan. Here he lies. Killed while filming a video blog. Got the famous waxing scene where he's waxing his chest, which Seth Rogen, later makes fun of. It was filmed legit, like it's famous that it was shot with 5 cameras, completely ad-libbed. Carell shouting out Kelly Clarkson's pretty funny.
No, Kelly Clarkson!
That just came out of nowhere, and he actually had to do that. And then eventually he gets up. My favourite line about it is,
you know what, guys? This is not a good look for me!
Pitch perfect, and it gives Carell the opportunity to do his kind of more manic stuff that you would have seen in a character like Brick from Anchorman. You then have a really sweet scene between Seth Rogen's character and Andy talking about how someone looks, what that means in terms of their standing socially, especially as young people too, when you're out on the dating scene. Like, people judge you immediately on the way that you look. It's just the way that people are built, as incorrect as that might be. And Seth Rogen's character, who I keep forgetting, is saying to Andy, look at me, just take a long, hard look. And he's got the tattoos, he's kind of chubby and schlubby, he's got a stoner's laugh, he's got a big goatee, and he's kind of scruffy looking. And he's like, I am ugly as fuck by traditional standards, and yet I get with women because I'm able to talk to them. That's actually the only real decent piece of advice, is that it's about confidence. About if you're confident, you are able to engage people, whether you want to fuck them or not, But he goes to the bookstore and shows Andy, the Elizabeth Banks character, another amazing cast member of this film. And she bends over and there's a G-string. And he's like, and Andy, obviously not seeing much in the way of G-strings in his sexual life, is like, there's something wrong with her underwear. And Seth Rogen has the line, yeah, they're not in my mouth. Which is pretty funny. Like, you couldn't do that anymore, but it's pretty funny. And then he goes in there and there's the great gag of, he says, just ask questions. You need to be cool, but be kind of a dick. Be David Caruso in Jade. And if you've ever seen the film Jade and then watched this scene, it is bang on.
Would it surprise you to know that Kyle Medford owned the Pacifica house?
Yes, it would.
What if I were to tell you I have a witness who's seen you there on more than one occasion?
Is there something I should be looking for? What do you like?
It is absolutely flawless. Like, it's such a great impersonation. And then he walks out going, oh, that was, that really worked for me. And that kind of leads him down the wrong path again. And he keeps wanting to call Trish as well, and they keep, diverting him away from that, which is ridiculous because it's absolutely the move. But then, Paul Rudd's character turns up on his doorstep with a big box of porn. Rudd leaves, and he's like, oh, okay, let me have a look here. And he tries to watch Starballs or something like that, and he's like setting up all these candles. He's put on Lionel Richie, and he's trying to do it, and the voiceover of the woman who's actually Stormy Daniels, the porn star in that fake porno, is the porn actress Stormy Daniels, who, if you don't know who that is, Google her and you'll find out real quick. She became particularly famous in the last few years, like more famous than a porn star usually is. She's talking, and then she's, it's not very sexy, and then all of a sudden it's his voiceover, and he he's like he's talking to himself. So he gives up. The box of porn, as Rudd brings it in, he's calling him out. He's like, School of Cock, Boner Jams 98, or 2003 or whatever it is, and, talking about the scenes I loved at that time. And he's like, everybody loves Raymond. That's not supposed to be in there. That's just a good show. I tape it sometimes. And he ends up watching an episode of that as well, which is good. It's a nice little point-to-point, like end-to-end moment of that joke. The next day at work, on their lunch break, they go to a speed dating luncheon, I guess you could call it. They go to a pub with a speed dating thing. It's like, 50 dates in 50 minutes or whatever. They go in there, and it proves again that these guys are in no way equipped to give advice on how to court. It's a great story device as well, to pack as many jokes as you can into a really, really limited time. There's even a buzzer of like when the people would get up and move to go to the next seat. This is a buzzer for when another joke's about to start. And it's really tight and really good screenwriting. But also Paul Rudd's character runs into his ex, and that causes sort of some calamity that leads to Andy's character becoming like having a higher position at Smart Tech. And it oftentimes, I noticed this more this time, maybe because I was making notes on it, but the sex jokes get really fucking exhausting. Like it's just end to end to end. But then I guess that's kind of the point, because Andy gets really tired of it after a while. He's like, fuck, I don't even want to think about it anymore. It's such a big deal like in my life, and it never used to be. And then, as I said, Paul Rudd's character is mashed, like completely poleaxed after this speed dating lunch thing where he ran into his ex. He's he's filming his ass with a camcorder, and he's like trying to sell it to someone and pretending it's his ex-girlfriend, going, hey, Amy, look at this and blah, blah, blah. And then he puts it down his ass.
You missed that ass? That's the ass of a free man. That ass is going out tonight, maybe to a club, maybe to a nightclub.
Fuck, man, it gets me every time. But then that does cause, Jane Lynch to say, look, I'm going to take him off the floor and send him home. I'm going to put you out as a salesman, because Andy works in the stockroom. And that again kind of leads to his growth as a character. He finally goes over to Catherine Kinnear's shop, the eBay shop. The character's name's Trish. They kind of engage. A young Jonah Hill there buying the big zip-up boots with the fish in them. And it's funny, like she ends up being one of the main protagonists, really. Like she has a very full story as well, but she only appears halfway through the second act, and then it's only in the last 30 minutes to half an hour we're introduced to her family, like her daughter, played by Kat Dennings in particular, who Andy has a kinship with because she's also a virgin, and they go to a seminar where they get some information on sex education, and he's a little bit more engaged than he should be, and it confuses everybody, but she kind of figures out that that's why. Again, it's really tight screenwriting to get this much information and have it come out naturally, and have Trish's character be like a fully formed character before we meet her as well. Like she does go through changes because Andy's, comes into her life obviously, but she is already very well established as to who she is. She's a very real and honest character. She's not the typical type of love interest that guys have a tendency to write, which is the pixie dream girl that doesn't fucking exist. She's in his life. She's not a foil for him either. Like she helps him go through changes and helps him become a better person just purely by the fact that she's a good person. She's not rewriting his history in order to be with him. She just wants to be with him. This is kind of an important point as well, where, after they've kind of gone home and the daughter walks in on them having sex or about to have sex, and then they go on another date and she's withheld information and he's withheld information. So he's about to, say, by the way, I'm a virgin. And she's like, well, why don't we not do it? We'll have a certain amount of dates and we won't do it. And he's like, oh, good, I've lucked out. I don't have to tell her this thing. This is a great idea. Brilliant. At this point, it would normally be, in the screenplay where they would double down on the rom part of this rom-com. But they don't really. It's kind of like a nice little montage of them just getting to know each other and normal stuff that would actually happen in a relationship regardless of sex. And you see that relationship becoming more fruitful as the kids get involved, and he starts having confidence being around someone else's children. The magic trick with the little girl, and you know, Kat Denny's making fun of him and him brushing it off.
Crap! It is your ear. There is your ear.
All right. Wait. Okay, but that means that you walk around with a rubber ear in your pocket all day?
Yeah, like half the time.
He is already becoming a stronger character than we originally saw. And he goes home and calls Cal, who's the Seth Rogen's character. He calls him up and he's like, oh, you know, I'm doing this and I didn't tell her. He's like, you didn't tell her? Okay, it's fine. She's got a kid and she's got a kid who's got a kid, and coughs and he's like, she's a grandma? And he's like, no, she's not. He's like, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I'm pretty sure she's a grandma, which is just a beautiful little, very dry Seth Rogen delivery as well. There's a great thing, but I think it might have been excised from the theatrical cut, where a very young Kevin Hart, who's not young, but young in his career, came in and he has a argument with Jay, and they're sort of back and forth in kind of, you know, ghetto flexing, I guess you could call it, and about who's harder, you know, who's from the more hard gang.
No, he don't need no help. He's already been served. I served him. He's taken care of. He's a little slow, but he got it. See, what he thought was he could come up in here and make the rules, but now he see that Jay make the rules in Smart Tech, that I run this bitch, and now he about to bounce.
It's your boy.
It all kind of comes out of nowhere, and Andy comes to try and deal with it, and then talking to Jay, and he's like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I came home and I left one of my condoms on, and I jumped in the shower with my missus, and she saw it, and she's broken up with me. It's like the buffoonery stops all of a sudden, and you realise just how ill-equipped these guys are, particularly Jay, to be giving any type of advice, especially when it comes to women. Trish helps Andy kind of move on by, you know, asking him what his dreams are, and he says, I would like to open an electronics shop. You know, I think I could do that. She says, you could sell your toys. You know, he ends up having a lot of money because of these toys, literally helping him put away childish things. The tension of the 20 dates before sex thing kind of gets to Andy, you know, where they're about to do it, and he's like worried about the toys, and then he does that typical fucking guy shit where he's scared, so he gets angry and starts blaming her for wanting to change him and saying, you want me to sell my toys? And she's like, no, I just want you to grow up and you ride a bike. He says Einstein rode a bike, and she's like,
He had a wife who he fucked, by the way.
This is what we would call in screenwriting Dark Night of the Soul, you know, the end of your second act going into the third act, where the hero has lost everything and has to regroup and form a new plan. Well, the new plan ends up being the wrong plan at this point. He goes back into Smart Tech and sees that, you know, Jay is using one of these big flat screen TVs to show the sonogram of his girlfriend Jill, and he's like, that's why she broke up with me, because she was worried I wouldn't be a good father, but we worked it all out, and, you know, look at that, look at the ultrasound, you know, this kid's not even 4 months old, and look at what he's packing, and he's like trying to find the penis on the sonogram thing, and, you know, Paul Rudd's like, looks like the Doppler radar, or looks like a poltergeist. And he's like, look at this. And then Moo's just like,
Look at what he's packing.
Everybody's dick looks big on 16-inch TV. My sister's dick looks big on TV, okay?
just a great little end of the scene line. They're all out that night celebrating. Andy gets really drunk and it's just like,
I need some poon.
And all the guys around him have now moved on. Andy's kind of the fuck up now. They're the ones who've all gone through the arc that we saw coming, and it's Andy regresses to where they wanted him to be in the beginning. So it's a weird kind of like switch of priority. He runs into the Elizabeth Banks character and agrees to go home with her and says,
Hope you have a big trunk, because I'm putting my bike in it.
Which is all sorts of double entendre going on there. So he goes back to her place and she starts sort of, you know, trying to seduce him and putting on music, and she gets in the bath and she uses the shower head to masturbate in front of him. And there's a great Carell delivery where he's like,
wow, this is graphic.
It's like, that's not the way that you do that. That's not the way that you talk about that particular scenario. I love it. And so he kind of figures out while all this is going on, no, this isn't what he wants. He doesn't want to be with this random woman. You know, he loves Trish. He wants to be with her. And he goes to leave and all the guys have followed him because Jay's like, I've slept with her and she's fucking crazy. We were following you to make sure you're okay. Telling him, yeah, go after Trish. But then Cal stays and just gets in the bath with her. You don't see it, but he's like, hey, I'm Cal. And then you just like, and that's the end of the scene. It's like, all right, fair enough. And then you've got the final sort of the trope, the rom-com trope of the chase for the person you love. He goes home, finds Trish at his apartment, and she's found all the porn, and he's trying to explain it's not his, and the fake vagina that he took from that, you know, session. And he's like, it's to learn. And she's like, you a crazy person? Like, what is this? You know? And he's like, no, that's not what it is. She storms out. He goes after her on the bike to the wonderful heat of the moment. Chases her down, ends up running into a truck and going through these two sides of a billboard, which is pretty funny, landing on the ground, and says to her, look, I've been weird for all this time because I'm a virgin. And she's like, I don't care about that. It's a beautiful line, about anything really. Like, you know, if you love someone, you find someone who you care for so deeply that you feel like you've loved them all your life before you met them. Anybody who feels that way about anybody is very, very lucky. And he says, you know, I think I was just waiting for you, and that's why it never happened for me. Great line. Really, really great line. So he sells all his toys, gets like $500,000. They have this massive wedding, and then it's the scene for the first time they're going to have sex. They go into the apartment that they're staying at after the wedding, and there's a guy there cleaning the floor, and they're like, get the fuck out! And they do it, and it says like 2 minutes later or whatever. He says, was that all right? She's like, yeah, you want to go again? And he's like, yeah, cool. Hour and 40 minutes later, when the shot, you know, Iris is up again, she says, was that all right for you or something? And Andy turns to the camera and starts to sing this.
When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars.
And then it's an amazing breaking of the fourth wall, like singing to the audience, and then all the cast are dancing, and it's such an obscure way to end this film that was narratively quite normal. Like, even though there was quirks and stuff, it didn't veer into the absurd the way that Anchorman does, you know, where there's like pet sharks and all that stupid shit. But then all of a sudden it becomes this like dance number to a baller song though. Like, it's a really good song. So there's that at least. I watched the director's cut. If you get a chance to, do watch that one because it's just fuller. There's more there. There's more to enjoy. But do go on YouTube and find the bloopers because just treat yourself. They're good fun. So this is one of my favourite comedies. I think it's got a great script. It's got a great cast. There is some problematic stuff there when it comes to race and gay panic and the optics on women. I don't think it's heartless. I don't think it's offensive. And all the people who kind of make, apart from the racial stereotype stuff, all the people who kind of make jokes at the expense of, you know, sex or sexuality are not the hero. You know, they're the ones who end up being ultimately changed by Andy's goodwill. It's just very much of its time, and it's well worth a look if you enjoy a giggle.
Universal Pictures.
I'm Trish.
Andy, she gave me her number.
My God, man!
The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
So thanks very much for watching again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Lisa, specifically Lisa, not anybody else, just Lisa. And we'll see you back next week for something else silly and funny. I think I might know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you. You've got to wait. All right? So we'll see you next week for something that I know about and you don't. Thanks very much. Cheers.